The ticket number 12 is in. Let us go back to New York.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cover One, the podcast. I am Russell Brown. This is episode number 45. I am joined by my special guest today, Brad Kelly of BreakingFootball.com and now of Cover1.net, our new evaluator and kind of draft expert, if you will. Brad, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be part of the team and get going on this draft season.
Yeah, man, absolutely. We're excited to have you on, and you're definitely I think you're the right now the rising star amongst draft Twitter, not going to lie. And you're going to have a little, oh, stop, don't say that. But no, for real, you're turning heads. People are shouting you out left and right, and you're going to grow and you're going to do some big things. So it's going to be awesome
thank you.
To see that. And with that, we got you on today, talk receivers and do those things because that's kind of your cup of tea. And I don't want to put you on the spot and, start talking about a bunch of random players that maybe you haven't got to yet. So receivers, I feel, is your thing. And I feel like I'm going to be learning some things. Before we get into receivers, I want to talk about Mobile, the Senior Bowl, some stuff that we saw down there because that was the first time I met you in Veets there, good old Veets. And having a couple of adult beverages and then wearing shorts the next day was a bad idea, hungover watching football.
Very bad idea.
Yeah, terrible idea. But it's all good. So let's talk about Mobile. First time down there, how was that experience for you?
For me, it was awesome. It was everything I expected and wanted and some. The fact that you kind of just be at practice and be in the first row and all these players are down there, but even the GMs and coaches that you see, John Lynch is 10 feet in front of me walking around watching goal line one-on-ones. So it's I think it's kind of cool to be able to see what the scouts see, what the personnel decision makers in the NFL see. And then obviously it was a great time just because I met so many people down there, the Breaking Football guys. We were all down there, and you and Eric, it was just so many guys that I knew through Twitter, and then I got to actually spend time with and have adult beverages. So it was awesome. Yeah, man, it was a really good time. And I've already done kind of a Senior Bowl recap show a couple weeks ago after the Senior Bowl. But, I want to get into it a little bit more in depth as far as receivers go, because that was kind of a group that I saw a little bit, but not too much. Bayshawn Hamilton, your boy. Yep. I saw him quite a bit and he stood out. James Washington obviously stood out a little bit. But I mean, really, what were some receivers that you took away from Mobile that were okay, I knew he was okay, but man, he's much better than I thought. Byron Pringle from Kansas State, I would say would probably be the number one guy after Deshaun Hamilton. He only has 69 catches in his college career. I think he only had 39 this past year, but they had 4 different QBs. And even when I was watching his film, they were going back and forth between quarterbacks throughout the game against Texas Tech. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of just as this revolving door. And I don't think he ever really established this rapport with his QBs. He has an interesting story because he was arrested a couple of times when he was growing up. I think one was armed robbery. Oh, wow. So, yeah. So he was a non-qualifier because of that. Ended up going to a JUCO. And then he had 2 years at Kansas State. And he's stayed out of trouble. But he has I think he has 2 kids, or he has a kid now. And he's 24. And now he's entering the draft. So he has this crazy backstory that kind of explains how he ended up at Kansas State and the fact that hasn't had as much production as you would like, but the talent is there. He's 6'1" or 6 foot 201. He is he's great at sinking his hips. He has enough size, enough athleticism that I think he's going to be a guy who might end up going late because of the character concerns. Yeah, really, he should be a 2nd or 3rd round pick.
All right. So he's a 2nd, 3rd round talent, but because of off the field stuff, he's probably going to be for sure a day. Do you think it's a for sure day 3 guy, or do you think there's?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. I mean, and then again, you never know. I mean, it's probably a safe bet to say that, but truthfully, I mean, we really never know with some of these guys. Joe Mixon was a great on the field talent, had some off the field stuff. That stuff cleared up a lot sooner than, some other players. Who was it? Tyreek Hill. He had some off the field stuff. Even Frank Clark, when he got drafted to Seattle, he had some off the field stuff. So you never really know, but I think that's a safe evaluation. Now you said he sunk his hips and all that stuff. As far as, for the people that don't really understand receivers and are still kind of learning it, What do you mean by that? Like as far as sinking hips, and why is that important for a receiver, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So when you are getting in and out of your breaks as a receiver, so when you're making your cuts, you want to be able to sink your hips and have that hip flexibility because it makes your cuts clean and it makes them fast. If you try to do it while you're standing straight up, it's just going to be too like rigid, and it's like so easy for a defensive back to read when you don't sink them, because when you sink them, now you can go in all different directions. But when you're straight up, you can't turn around. You can't do a curl because you're standing straight up. You can't turn around back to the quarterback. So you have it's about options. It's about like having them be smooth and fast. So like he's really good at it. His hip flexibility is incredible. I actually talked to him after one of the practices, and the first thing I asked him was like, "How do you get that flexible?" And he said the last year or 2 years that he got like resistance bands, and he uses them every night because he says he was told that would be the number one thing that would help him would be added flexibility.
Wow.
And so I think it definitely helps him because his breaks are clean. He uses his head well. He uses eye deception, head nods. He brings his shoulders with him when he breaks, and like that gets DBs all over the place.
Yep. And
then his ability to sink his hips, and like he has clean breaks. They're defined. They're very defined, and like so it keeps the angles correct. So he's really good at that.
All right. Cool. Now, is he like, I haven't watched him yet, and like I saw a lot of stuff about him down in Mobile, and people were talking about him and how he was turning heads and a little bit better than expected and stuff like that. Is he a guy that is like a speedster, or is he more of like a precise route runner? Is he kind of describe some of his skill sets, if you will, as far as like what he could be at the next level?
I think he's pretty fast. He was a kick returner too. So he definitely has some speed, but he wins because of his route running. Yeah. He has great hand usage. So he like operates his routes with a clean frame. The defensive back's hands are never getting on him, which is huge because if you're not a big overpowering guy, you can't be getting contacted.
Right.
And he's 200 pounds, which isn't bad, but he's not a huge like 225 like an Auden Tate is, who can kind of be able to fight through the physicality. So like that's his hand usage is big, and then his precise route running is kind of how he gets open. His hands are actually kind of shaky as far as catching the ball. He catches a lot with his body.
Yeah.
But I think at the next level, he'll be able to create enough separation where he's able to get away with that.
Okay. Do you have any team fits for him or any other receiver potentially out of Mobile that, when you like, we'll talk about him and then we'll move into Deshaun Hamilton. Is there any team fits for him as far as coming out of Kansas State?
Well, for those of you who don't know, I am a Patriots fan. I know that might not sit well with too many Cover One fans, but I think he could play for a team like that. He actually kind of reminds me of Malcolm Mitchell from the Patriots, who I know was hurt this year, but as a rookie, had a really good season. So I think a team like that, he played almost strictly on the outside in college. I think he has the ability to move inside, even though he's not quite as quick. He's more fast than he is quick.
Yeah.
I think he could play there in a lot of different offenses. So I don't think there's really a scheme that he doesn't really fit into.
Okay. Now, as far as Deshaun Hamilton, I mean, this was a guy that me and the Cover One crew down in Mobile, we watched film of him. And I mean, I was just in awe, like, of some of the things that we were seeing, because like you see, like a lot of the film I watched of him back in November was live broadcast stuff I saw on YouTube, and I didn't have the access to the all 22 on it yet. And then we watched some all 22 of him, and it was just like, holy cow, this guy is incredible with like that little inside out move that he does. It's fantastic. I mean, what were your thoughts on him? Did he win the Senior Bowl week for you as far as receivers, or did you kind of have that expectation for him? Because for me, out of the receivers, I didn't watch all of them, but for me, he was the guy that really stood out. I thought he had a really strong week. So, I mean, was he a guy that really stood out, or did you kind of have those expectations?
I didn't have those expectations. I didn't watch him going into the Senior Bowl week because he was such a late addition. He played in the Shrine Week the week before, so I didn't even have a chance to watch him. So what he did impressed me because I didn't expect that at all. And like you said, I'd seen him live, but it's kind of hard to see live.
Mm-hmm.
The focus on the quarterback, and McSorley's just throwing up like YOLO balls every play. So it's like kind of hard to see what Hamilton was capable of on the live broadcast. But like being able to just watch specifically him and seeing him in person, I think he was the number one receiver there. He was the best one that was there that particular week. I think I talked to him too. He said that the Shrine Week the week before helped him a lot at the Senior Bowl because he kind of felt like he was back in season. You know, he had 3 practices in a game, and then he had 3 practices in a game. So it was like kind of like he was back in season while everyone else was kind of getting their feet wet again.
Right.
I think that's huge, and that probably has to be considered. But I think he had the best week, and he's like Byron Pringle on steroids as far as his hip mobility. He is like his lateral agility is crazy, and like that's really how you mentioned that inside out move. He's able to press up on defensive backs, and then his lateral agility, the way he can move left and right, is like it's special, and that's when he gets defensive backs like lunging and leaning, and like that's how he creates that separation. And it's like it's special. It's something that you don't normally see. Yeah,
and I mean, like we were watching it, and it was like, okay, like I've seen receivers do this, but like this guy's doing it, and it's filthy. And he's doing like the game we watched was against Michigan, and like I'm not saying Michigan's great or anything like that because I'm from the state. I'm not even a Michigan fan, but like I'm watching them just absolutely just run right by these guys with that move, and I'm just like, dude, this guy is crazy. And so I really paid attention to him in there. I mean, where do you think is there a specific scheme that he fits in, or is he kind of like Pringle where you plug him in and you're going to get, some immediate results?
So Hamilton played almost strictly in the slot for Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not an underneath receiver. He's not like an Amendola where he's going to win mostly underneath and get yards after the catch. Not that he can't run with the ball. He can. He's actually kind of physical when he does. He laid down this incredible stiff arm against Indiana where he ran the dude over. but he's not like that type of like quick underneath guy. He's fast, but he's not a special athlete. So he's in the slot. He's kind of unique. He can win at all levels of the field. He was great with deep balls, great in the intermediate. So I think I've been looking at Dallas at pick 50 for him.
Okay.
I think that's the right spot because they need someone who can separate very badly. And he's different than Beasley, and he's different than Williams, and he's different than Dez. So he would kind of like fit into that like the whole package. And they desperately need someone who can separate, and he has incredible separation skills.
Right. I think that's actually a pretty good fit as well. And I've seen that a couple of times across Twitter as far as, him being an option for them in the second round. Is that where you think he's going to end up going in round 2? Do you have a round 2 grade on him?
I have a round 2 grade on him. I think he might slip to late or early round 3, but I think he will go in that range. I think after the Senior Bowl, his stock is high. He has an incredible backstory too, wildly different from Pringle's. His parents are both U.S. Marines. He was actually born in Okinawa, and he helped raise his older brother who is nonverbal and has autism. So he basically helped him every day. And then when he was young, his mom had breast cancer. So that was like a huge burden for him as far as like trying to help his mom and his brother. And he was like only like 10 or 11 years old when it was going on.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and he already has his degree. He's working on a second degree. He was like a very good student. So he's like Mr. Intangible as far as that goes. So I think that'll help his draft stock too. So I think he could probably go in the second or third round.
All right, cool. Well, I mean, if your team's out there and you're looking for a round 2 receiver and you don't want a guy in round 1, Deshaun Hamilton's probably that guy. But let's move forward from Mobile in the Senior Bowl because I mean we could definitely talk about guys like Aitman in Washington. But I do want to talk about just wide receivers in general because I want to get into your rankings, your sleepers potentially at the position, and kind of how you evaluate the wide receiver position. It's interesting because the consensus number 1 receiver pretty much across everywhere you look, it's got Calvin Ridley, the receiver out of Alabama, as wide receiver number 1. But for you, it's a little bit of a different story. And you've got Dante Pettis. And no, I'm not – Brad, I promise I'm not subtweeting you right now, okay? I promise, man. I know that's kind of the common thing right now. Everybody's subtweeting each other. But you've got Pettis as number 1, and I mean, I do want to know what's the reasoning behind it.
So as far as how I evaluate, because I think you have to understand that to understand how I get to my rankings. I coach high school football and I coach the receivers. So I base my ranking and my scale off of what I expect out of my athletes. I want well-rounded players. I want players who can block. I want players who play special teams. I want guys who play in the slot and on the outside, and they can go deep, and they can beat in shallow routes, they can beat in intermediate routes. I basically just want all around players, and I want good character. So I'm not saying Calvin Ridley's like a bad guy, but I'm just saying like as far as wanting well-rounded athletes, like that's what I look for. And when it comes to Dante Pettis, he has elite hands. His 114 catches over the last 2 years only has 4 drops. It's a catch rate of it's a drop rate of like 3%. Calvin Ridley's is 10% this past year. Mm-hmm. So like that goes into it. Pettis, I think he runs better routes. His hip mobility is crazy. His explosiveness is crazy. He's a 24-foot, 7-inch long jumper when he was in high school, which was 8th in the country. He's actually – Dory Jackson was 4th, which actually was like a pretty cool little nugget. But
that's pretty sweet, actually.
Yeah. He can jump high. He can rise. His athleticism, they do that like that winter combine type thing at Washington for the underclassmen, and his like broad jump is close to 11 feet. His vertical is in the high 30s. He's been clocked at in the 4.3s. He'll probably run 4.4, but I think he has everything. There's nothing that he can't do on football field.
Now, do you look at guys like you just said he's been clocked at 4.3, but he'll probably run around a 4.4. I mean, do you look at speed? Is that a big thing that you evaluate? And if, like let's say a guy runs a 4.57 or something like that. I mean, is that something where you're like, I don't know if I would really take this guy?
It has a little bit to do with it. So I always go back to Anquan Boldin, because Anquan Boldin ran a 4.71, but he might have just put together a Hall of Fame career. Mm-hmm. But when I watch Anquan Boldin, you can just tell that he wants the ball more than anyone else.
Yeah,
he has the dog in him, and I think if you run a little bit slower, you have to have that mentality. You have to look like Anquan Boldin or like Golden Tate or like Jarvis Landry as far as how they compete, and like their compete factor is like super high. So I think as far as speed goes, it depends. If you're a little bit slower and you don't have that mentality, then I don't think you'll grade very high. But if you have the speed, then I think it's less of an issue.
Okay. Now, who falls after Pettis? And let's just go 1 through 5.
Okay. So full disclosure, I have yet to grade Cortland Sutton. So I know that he's kind of a popular top 10, and I have yet to grade Deion Kane. I know he's kind of popular in the top 10. Mm-hmm. So I don't have those grades yet. But my 1 through 5 is Pettis at 1. Calvin Ridley is number 2. DJ Moore is number 3. Anthony Miller is 4 with an asterisk that I don't know what the extent of his foot injury is.
Okay.
Auden Tate is 5. Christian Kirk is 6, and Deshaun Hamilton is 7. I want to get to the point where I said Hamilton.
Now, did you say Mike? You didn't say Michael Gallup, right?
No.
Where's he at?
I actually have a 4th down grade on Michael Gallup. So kind of as I mentioned, the fact that I like guys who can block. His blocking is atrocious.
Yeah.
His effort's very low. I didn't really see it with Michael Gallup, to be honest. And even at the Senior Bowl, his measurements, he was smaller than he was listed.
Yeah.
And he's just really inconsistent. I think he has effort issues like badly. Like, you see lapses. There was one play during the practices where someone overthrew him and he got picked, and he just walked off the field. Everyone else was still playing.
Oh, wow.
That didn't really sit right with me. So I don't know. I don't really see it with Gallup.
Yeah. Well, I like Michael Gallup a lot. He was the first receiver I watched going for this year. I watched him, and I actually wrote about him for Breaking Football. And I liked what I saw, and I've watched a little bit into this year, but I'm hoping I thought, okay, summertime, I see this guy. Maybe he's a little bit of a sleeper. I was feeling all good about it. And now, people are bringing up the effort issues and stuff like that. And, it was definitely something I heard down in Mobile, and it was like, okay, maybe this guy isn't as legit as I think he is. And I'm hoping he's not another Rashard Higgins. You know what I mean? Who, yes, they both came out of Colorado State, but Higgins was a guy that I really liked a couple years ago. And I thought he was going to go round 2, maybe round 3. And I think he ended up going round 5 or round 6. And Michael Gallup, round 4, you might be right on that. How many receivers have you studied?
I've studied 22 of the 34 FBS guys that I want to look at. So a pretty good amount.
Are you going full on receivers first, and then just kind of going in, trickling your way into other positions, or are you?
Yeah, receivers is the number one concern for me at the moment. And then once I finish, I'll go into other positions.
Right. And like, obviously I know you've watched, you've paid attention to what other people are saying. And I know you've watched a little bit of other guys. I'm not saying you're strictly receivers all day long. You get the consensus. I totally get it. Let's talk about Auden Tate, because he was there on your list. And I want to talk about him because he's very intriguing to me. He's 21 years old, 6'5", 225. The lazy people out there will compare him to Calvin Benjamin because he played at Florida State. And I just recently did a mock draft, and I put him at number 24 to Carolina, of course. And people are commenting and going, "Oh, you got Auden Tate. He's just another Calvin Benjamin going to Carolina from Florida State." And I'm like, dudes, stop. He's my second ranked receiver. I really like him simply because of the upside. I think, while yes, he's a little bit raw at certain areas, but he's just still a very talented receiver. He goes up, he gets the football, and I just like what he does at that spot on the outside for that. And I like him a lot. Where do you have him as far as grade and as far as round and some of the skill sets? What do you like about him? What do you not like about him? Or is there maybe nothing you don't like about him?
So I have him as a second-round grade. He's my fifth receiver at the moment. Him and Christian Kirk actually graded out at the same number, but I would take Auden Tate because his potential is so much higher. Mm-hmm. Just like you said, his physical profile. So as far as Tate goes, he has the potential, and it's not just because of his size, it's because he actually shows a lot in his route running. It's not consistent enough, but there is there is some nuance. He actually he's pretty flexible in his lower body. Yeah. Surprisingly flexible in his lower body. He's able to shift his hips very well. He has pretty good hand usage as well. But on top of that, like you said, his hands are phenomenal. His ball skills, his body control is all so good, and you can see that right away when you watch him. Yeah. He can sky over guys, but he also there's also a lot of think nuance that people don't notice when it comes to that. There was a game. There were a bowl game against Southern Miss, and I keep going back to this play when I think of Auden Tate. I think he's running a post route, and he gets thrown, and it's over his head. He leaps off his left foot, and the safety's coming over to hit him, and he slows himself up in the air, catches the ball, slows himself up in the air, and lands on his left foot, and then takes a shot and holds onto the ball. Whereas if he just leapt off his left foot and then landed on his right foot, he probably wouldn't have made the catch because the ball would have got dislodged. So he's very aware when he rises, which is something that I've never really seen in someone that young before. Yeah, and he's not afraid to just go up there and catch it. I mean, he'll go up there, catch it, and he'll slam down into the ground shoulder first. Doesn't matter. He's not. Yeah. He doesn't seem like a guy that's really cared about getting hurt. He just wants to contribute to the team, catch the football, score touchdowns, and I think he scored 16 this past year, if I'm not mistaken. So he's a big red zone guy. And, granted, he did probably some other stuff outside of the red zone. Obviously, it wasn't just 16 straight shots, from 20 yards or less. But he's just, I don't know. I really like him, and I've got an early round 2 grade on him. I think he could easily become a first-round pick in that back end because I'll say it week in and week out. People just, people with my mock draft, people don't get that you're not going to give 32 first-round grades. So, right. if your team's picking 28th, 29th, you're a Patriots fan, they're picking 31st. They're probably, first of all, they're probably going to trade out of the pick because they're the Patriots. Definitely going to trade out, yeah. Yeah, but if they don't, they sit there and they take a player, odds are they're going to be reaching on a guy or they're taking an early round 2 guy. It doesn't really matter unless somebody falls to them. So, normally you're giving probably first-round grades of 20 players, maybe 25 if it's an exceptional class. And maybe this is the class where you're giving out 25 first-round grades with guys like Michelle and Wynn and stuff like that. But I don't know. I just constantly see that stuff. And when I talk about Auden Tate, I get bashed for putting him in round 1. But I have a second-round grade on him, and you do too. So I think I'm doing okay. I don't know. Yeah, and on Auden Tate too, He's like the anti-Gallup. His effort is so high. Mm-hmm. And when he goes to block, he is a guy he commits to his teammates. He wants to win football games. His effort is high. And the fact that he's 6'5", 6'6", and he is 225, which is it's good weight. He's not skinny. Yeah. He's able to latch on to guys when he blocks. And his effort, you could see his feet are buzzing when he goes to block. It's not something that he takes off. So he's a guy he wants to win football games. Yeah. A lot more. I think if you were comparing to Michael Gallup, he wants to win a lot more than Gallup does.
Yep. Oh, yeah, for sure. Now, last guy I want to talk about, maybe one more after it, but you talked about Christian Kirk a little bit with Auden Tate and Kirk having similar grades, but you would take Tate because of his physical presence and stuff like that, and just the upside too. But with Christian Kirk, what's your evaluation on him? Because when I watched him, I just didn't see it. Like I see so much of him being, at times even a top 15 pick, and I see stuff as far as a first round guy. I don't see it, man. I don't see it. Maybe I'm missing something. What am I missing?
So his routes aren't as defined as, say, Deshaun Hamilton or Dante Pettis or Calvin Ridley or even Anthony Miller. But he has the speed, and his speed is crazy. So like he's able to win on speed cuts, and like he doesn't have to flash as much deception and nuance in his stems because he's that fast. And then on top of it, I think his ability with the ball is just special. Like you get to him the ball in a little bit of space, and he's a home run threat right away. And then on top of that too, he's versatile. He's a kick and punt returner. If Dante Pettis was it wasn't in this draft class, we'd be talking about Christian Kirk's all-time potential as a punt returner.
Right.
Because he is that good. It just happens to be the fact that Pettis is a little bit better.
So where do you think Kirk falls? I mean, where does he go into this draft?
I think he'll be a second-round pick, and I would take him in the second round. But I think he's a second-round pick just because I think there's enough depth in this class where maybe only Ridley goes in the first round, and then you'll see like 9 or 10 guys go in the second and the third.
Right.
So I think he'll be one of those 9 or 10 guys who ends up in the second or third round. I think he'll be a second-round pick.
Yeah, well, my thing with Kirk, like you mentioned, he's not the best route runner, and I think that's my thing is I pay attention to route running, and I want guys that can run routes. And sometimes when I'm looking at a guy with a player of his size, and I know that he's a speedster, I'm looking at particular routes. And with his speed, he's clearly going to run vertical. He's going to run a post, and he's going to outrun that safety once he makes that break. But I felt like when I watched, maybe it was just there was so much hype about him, and I read into that hype, and then when I watched the film, I expected more, I guess. And I've done that with plenty of players, Marcel Frazier was a guy, and I've talked about this before. Marcel Frazier was a guy that I read a bunch about at the Shrine Week and saw some videos of him, and I watched one game, and I was like, okay, I see some upside there, and he's looking really great down in the Shrine Week. And then I put more tape on him, and I'm like, okay, there's no way this guy's a top 40 grade like I initially thought he was going to be. And I thought I was finding some kind of diamond in the rough, and he's just rough all the way around. And I'm not saying Christian Kirk is, a diamond in the rough or rough all the way around, but I just was expecting so much more. I
think it's fair because like I said, he's not the best route runner as far as his breaks go. There's not much like deception in them. But they are clean, and I think with him too is he's young. He's a true junior.
Yeah,
and he is so athletic that if he gets taken to a good team, and they just give him that one little extra, that nuance that Deshaun Hamilton can show or Ridley can show, he will be the best receiver from the class because his athleticism is that high.
Right.
Like it is a little bit of a projection. I think early he's definitely your punt and kick returner in the NFL. And he's probably like your third option. I said that I think he's Marquise Lee is his floor as a receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add in the return ability, and then hopefully, his projection is high because he's young.
Right. Well, it's funny. You bring up Marquise Lee, and it's man, you're like in my head. This is flowing perfectly. We talk about Marquise Lee and the floor. When I watch James Washington, the floor that I see with him is freaking Marquise Lee. And it's weird because it's crazy. I know. I looked at Matt. I always when I'm comparing players, and this is why I don't like pro comps because I suck at them. Two, it's just I like to try and let a player be himself. Like I want Calvin Ridley to be Calvin Ridley. I don't want him to be Julio Jones and AJ Green. But when I watch, James Washington, I looked at measurables pretty similar as far as right now the projected listed measurables for James Washington. And I guess I could look back at what he was at the Senior Bowl. But I'm pretty sure they were very similar to Marquise Lee when he was at the Combine. And I think they're going to run pretty similar.
And I just think the floor. But as far as the ceiling goes, I mean, James Washington could be through the roof. What are your thoughts on him? We haven't talked much about him yet.
So I'm not a big fan of James Washington. He didn't grade.
So the floor's right on then. I'm good.
His grade, he didn't grade well with me. He's another guy. His stock blocking effort is just so bad, and I might have been skewed because I watched Anthony Miller right before I watched James Washington. It was the same day actually.
Yeah.
And Anthony Miller's effort is like through the roof, and then Washington's just like so lackadaisical. And I've been told, I don't buy into this, but I've been told that that's part of Oklahoma State's like system is that you don't really have to block if you're a receiver because they want to save your legs for when you go vertical. But then you look across the field at Marcel Aitman, and he might be the best blocking receiver in the class.
Yeah.
So I don't really buy into that.
Sounds like an excuse for Washington lovers.
Right. So then on top of that, Washington, he is going to win on 8 and 9 routes, but is he going to win on a dig? And is he going to be able his hip mobility isn't that good. He's kind of stiff. He's more of a build-up speed guy. So I have actually compared him to Torrey Smith. Ravens Torrey Smith.
Yeah.
As basically like actually the size I think matches up pretty well, and then he's able to go vertical, and he's going to win vertical, probably once a game. But is he going to be able to run a dig route or like a deep out and with create separation? I don't think it's there. I don't think so. He's kind of I think he's more of a niche player than people want to admit.
Right. Now, do you have like you said he's going to run 8, 9 routes really well, but not a dig and stuff like that. I mean, do you have a specific team for him or scheme that, because they were in that pass-happy offense in Oklahoma State, so much vertical stuff. Do you think that's going to limit him when he gets to the pros?
So I think it'll limit him. I think the Ravens are a good fit for him because they're desperate for receiver talent. A team like the Bears, if they pass on Ridley in the first round, could be looking for James Washington as a deep threat. But I do think he's kind of I think he's more of a deep threat than a well-rounded receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So okay. I don't know. I'm not a fan of Washington.
That's fair. I mean, I've got him as my third-ranked receiver, but again, I haven't taken a deep dive. I mean, you've watched 22 freaking receivers, dude. I haven't watched 22 receivers, I can tell you that. And I don't even know if I'll get to 22. So we'll see. So let's move forward. Let's talk with draft options. Moving from receivers to draft options. Something I want to do moving forward with this draft podcast is talk about options for each team at each pick. And with the draft, I mean, really 2 months away, we've kind of got to buckle down on these. So I want to start with number 1, the Cleveland Browns. We won't start with 1 and I guess we could do 1 and 4. Screw it. So we'll do 1 and 4. Cleveland Browns. What do you think are some options for them as far as what they do at 1 and what they do at 4?
So I have Sam Darnold as QB1. I've watched significantly less of the quarterbacks, but I have watched most of the top guys. And I think he's number 1. And that Rose Bowl game against Penn State is just like burned into my brain every time I think of Sam Darnold. And just how great he was that night at, I think he was only 19 or 20 years old. I think he was 20 years old when that game happened. And I just can't get that game out of my mind. And I think because of that, his ceiling is high. Like he's got a good build, big kid, he's strong. He has an above average arm, but I think his anticipation skills and his ball placement can be high despite his like kind of lack of mechanics.
Yeah.
So I think they'll probably go Darnold, and I'll agree with the pick if they go Darnold.
Yeah. Well, and in my mock draft, the first one I've done for the year, but I've got Sam Darnold going 1, and I don't even have Darnold as QB1. I don't even have him as QB2. I've got Josh Rosen as quarterback number 1 with Baker Mayfield at 2, and Darnold's 3 with Lamar Jackson 4, and then Allen number 5, who we'll talk about a different day. But Sam Darnold, like you said, the upside is so there with him, and he's a guy that I like for them at 1. I wouldn't be opposed to them taking Saquon Barkley, but I know people are going to rip me apart for that. But, I mean, it's a pass-happy league now. So I think Barkley's an option. I think Rosen's obviously an option as QB1. But I think realistically, I think their choice is probably going to be just Sam Darnold. He's a young kid. You can groom this kid into what you want him to be. Yeah, lower body mechanics are a little off. The throwing motion's off. But, again, ball placement, he can place the ball at times crazy good.
Pocket mobility's there. He's got the build that you want out of a quarterback. So there's really no, I get it. 6-foot quarterbacks can succeed. I'm not saying they can't, but you've got general managers, you've got scouts, you've got head coaches stuck in their ways and things that, they learned back in the 80s and 90s and everything else. And they want these quarterbacks that are 6'3" or higher. Darnold fits that build. So I like Darnold a lot. And then as far as number 4, I know we've got to obviously do what's left at 2 and 3, but what do you think they do at 4? Do they shift over if they go from quarterback? Do they shift over to the defense, or do they stay on the offensive side and maybe look at Barkley or somebody else?
So if we were doing, what I would do, if I own the Browns, first thing I would do is fire Hugh Jackson. But
yes, of course.
Right. So I actually think that if they got a competent head coach, that Kaiser could be the answer.
I do too.
And people are kind of not even realizing that that's an option, and maybe they sign McCarron and they don't go quarterback at 1. And if they don't go quarterback at 1, why wouldn't they take Saquon Barkley?
Exactly.
And then maybe take Quentin Nelson at 4. And then suddenly you have now surrounded, if Thomas comes back, you have Thomas, you have Joe Bitonio, and you have Quentin Nelson on the O-line. You have a good running back. You have Josh Gordon, Corey Coleman, David Njoku. Suddenly you kind of have a squad. You know what I mean? I think that's and maybe it's McCarron at QB, but that's kind of I think that's a good option. People aren't really realizing it. But what I think they'll do is Darnold at 1 and then try to get Minkah Fitzpatrick at 4. Try to keep revamping that defense and that secondary, match them up with Jabril Peppers. I think that they use Jabril Peppers so wrong. They use him as a deep safety. We should be in the box player, but maybe they draft Minkah and use him the way he should be used as the kind of nickel overhang guy. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what they'll do at 4.
Yeah, I mean, in my mock draft that you can find on cover1.net, and you can rip me to shreds just like everybody else. I went Darnold and I went Barkley, but I simply went off of projection for the quarterback at Darnold, and I went with best player available at 4. And, I mean, that's like a fantasy team in my opinion. Sam Darnold, Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
And I like Saquon because, one, he can catch passes out of the backfield. He's caught over 100 passes the last 3 years, combined, of course. And, I mean, yes, he does a lot of stupid stuff as far as his vision, I wouldn't say is elite. He doesn't necessarily hit the hole. He does a lot of east and west stuff, trying to do too much laterally. He doesn't take the yards that's given. Go get those 2 or 3 yards, dude, and live for another down. And maybe he's just avoiding contact. I totally get that. But he's a workout warrior as far as, he's going to test very well. But he's incredibly strong. I mean, so strong.
Yeah.
And I just think, the big play upside that's there for him and the fact that he can be consistent. I mean, if you're getting 4 yards a carry from him and he's catching 5 passes out of the backfield and he's going to get you a big play probably once a game with 1 or 2 touchdowns, that's good. I think that's good. But what they'll probably do, Sam Darnold, and I agree, Minkah Fitzpatrick, they've got to bring Peppers down in the box, like you said, nickel overhang guy, and they've got to blitz him. They've got to play him towards the line. He can be that perfect guy outside in that forces a lot of stuff back inside, and you've got the flow, the pursuit of the defense. So
and able to cover tight ends too. People don't really Minkah Fitzpatrick and Peppers both have experience at corner. They're cover guys. Yeah, you cover running backs and tight ends, but they can't do that when you're playing 30 yards off the ball in the deep middle.
Right. And I mean, granted, Peppers I think he's a liability in coverage. He doesn't have the premier ball skills that you want, but does he need them? No. I mean, if you're playing him down in the box and he's covering tight ends and he's doing his job, that's fine. And I think he would be able to hold his own against, Tyler Eifert with a good back and Zach Ertz and maybe not Gronk. Gronk's on his own level. We all know that. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what the Browns do. Are they going to totally Cleveland Brown it, or are they going to play this thing smart and actually build a good football team? Because they've got 6 picks in the top 65, and there's so much that they can do right that it'd be embarrassing if they did it wrong. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. Let's move forward with the Giants at number 2. Where do you think they go? What are some options for them?
For me, this one's easy. I would go Josh Rosen. Especially if Darnold is gone at 1. I actually think Rosen is my comparison for him is Eli Manning. I think he has the body type. He has the size. His footwork in the pocket is pristine. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, dude.
Good arm, not great arm. He has great timing. He's great anticipation. I've seen a lot of plays with him that he's throwing the ball before the guy's even close to being open.
Yeah.
But he's placing it in a spot where they can get to it. So I like Rosen. I have him at QB2. He's in my top 10 as a player. So I would go the Giants. I would go number 2. I also hate the Giants though, so I hope they mess it up.
What would be messing it up? I mean, obviously taking a kicker would mess it up, but what would be something that they do to mess it up?
Jeez.
Bradley Chubb?
Yeah, but that's not like – I mean, Bradley Chubb's a really good player. But
yeah. I mean, but that's not even a need. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if they pass on a QB, I think Eli – I mean, I think he shouldn't be the starter past 2018, 2019.
No, 2018, and that's it.
Yeah, right. And they need to take – I don't think they're going to go with a rookie. I think it'd be good for Rosen to be in there for a year, hold a clipboard, learn from a guy. I don't think Eli's any good, but I think he's going to end up as a Hall of Famer. So if he can learn for a year underneath Eli, and then it'll be good moving forward. The Giants, I can't remember the last time they picked in the top 5. Like, they're not going to have a chance to take a premier quarterback prospect again for years. Like, this is their time to do it. And
yeah.
At number 2.
Right. No, and I agree. And I've got him taking Josh Rosen as well. And I think it's, the fact that you've got the opportunity. They haven't picked in the top 5 since they've taken Eli. And
wow, yeah, okay.
I don't think they might have when they taken Jason Pierre-Paul. But I don't think so. I think he was like a top 15 pick. He was, like 9 or 10 or 11. I can't remember. But maybe not. He might have even been farther down the board than that. I can't remember. But either way, having Josh Rosen, like you said, learn from Eli, I agree. I think that's a good thing for him. It gives him an opportunity to – I'm not saying he's immature, but get his feet wet in the NFL because he's the type of guy – we heard those preseason comments from him. School and football don't go together, this and that. And he's just the type of guy that I think going to the New York market and stuff like that, Give him a year to settle in, learn from Eli, learn how the franchise works, because that's a team that can't afford a full rebuild. That's a team that the Giants fan base, they want to win now. And I mean, just like the Jets fans, they want to win now, but that's never going to happen because they're always disappointed and they pick 6th overall more than any team ever. Like you're as bad as the Browns at this point. You know what I mean? Like you're just consistently picking 6. You're never getting better, nor are you getting worse. But yeah, with the Giants, they've got some other options. Quentin Nelson obviously makes a ton of sense. Saquon even makes sense too. I don't think you can go wrong with Minkah Fitzpatrick. If you did, that would be a shocker. But there is a legitimate chance that they trade down. I like the thought of Josh Rosen, but this is a team that if they do cut some players, and hear me out on it, if they cut, DRC, they cut Brandon Marshall, they cut some of these veteran players that are holding up a ton of cap space, they're taking away some, I'm not saying quality starters, but they're taking away starters, and now they're asking depth position guys to come in and step up. Well, with that, now you're losing all your depth, and you only have $21 million in cap room to work with, and you're going to have to make some decisions. Clearly, you cut some guys, you clear up some cap room, you make some decent signings and add depth. But if you trade down, let's say the recent rumor, the Buffalo Bills, you get 21, 22, some extra picks for the future, you add that depth, you get younger, and who's to say you don't have something with Davis Webb, and who's to say you can't take a quarterback at 21, 22 with maybe Lamar Jackson or Mason Rudolph. I mean, I'm not saying those are the guys, but I don't think Josh Allen will be there. Baker won't be there. Any of the top, any of those 4 guys that we consensus knows, I don't think those guys will be there. But Lamar should be there. Rudolph should be there. So those are some options later in the draft too. And they don't necessarily have to force their hand at Rosen, but I think that's the best bet for them.
I think if they were to trade down and they could stay in the top 10 and add picks and maybe still be able to take Baker Mayfield, then that would probably be the ideal scenario. I would obviously be dependent on the fact how different they see Rosen and Mayfield as prospects. And maybe they could take Baker Mayfield at number 2.
Right.
And I'd be fine with that. So it kind of is like if they're gonna trade back and they could go back to 20, then I think the drop off between Rosen and Lamar Jackson, like I like Lamar Jackson, but I think the drop off is significant enough that it wouldn't be worth adding the depth guys.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not saying, right there, boom, 21, you got to force your – yeah. But, I don't know. The thing, too, is they won't trade with the Jets. So many people talk about that too. And like, if they stay in the top 10, some teams that they would probably trade with, I mean, maybe Denver if they miss out on Kirk Cousins. And if you go from 2 to 5 and you get, let's say, 2 additional or 3 additional picks, that's not a bad bet. And then you move down and get Baker Mayfield. Pretty good.
Yeah, that would be a great scenario, in my opinion, for them.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. So, I mean, I guess really probably what the Giants are hoping for is Kirk Cousins signs with the Jets, and then Denver wants to trade up and go all in to get Josh Rosen. So, or maybe they like Baker Mayfield enough for Josh Allen to go at number 2. So, I don't know. But let's move forward. Colts, and we'll close this thing out with the Colts at 3. What do they do? I mean, where are they going? I mean, this team right now they really don't even have a quarterback. I'm not saying they're taking a QB at 3, but Andrew Luck hasn't picked up a football in over a year. I mean, what are they doing in Indy?
Yeah, so you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think they actually might end up going quarterback. I think like no one has really put out a mock draft where they have like quarterback, and then maybe another one at 5, and then the Jets sit there like on their thumbs. Like that could happen. There could be 4 quarterbacks in the top 5 because the Colts could take one. I think that's a realistic option because we don't know about Andrew Luck, and they obviously are going to know more than the public. So people might not even like think that's an option. Then come the draft, they could take Josh Allen.
Yeah.
But if Luck is okay and his projection is that he's going to play this season and he's going to be back to his normal self, I would go either Saquon Barkley or Quentin Nelson. I'd probably say Nelson. And I know like that tantalizing talent that Barkley has is like hard to pass on. But if your quarterback is coming off a missed year and has a terrible shoulder, you probably should take O-line with that next pick.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's what I got, dude. Like that's what I'm saying. The mock draft I did is Quentin Nelson. I mean, we literally every person that you've talked about is my pick so far. Darnold, Rosen, and then Nelson. And it's you need to protect him. Your offensive line is terrible. They've given up, I think, the 3rd most sacks over the last 3 or 4 years in the NFL. And it's exactly why Andrew Luck is just injured right now. And he's not playing. And that's definitely something that's affected this team because if he's playing, they're winning football games. No doubt about it. But I mean, adding Saquon Barkley would be great because Frank Gore's not going to play forever, but you do have a need at offensive line badly, and adding Quentin Nelson just makes a ton of sense. I don't think taking a quarterback at 3 is outrageous, but it definitely could happen. I don't think it will. I think if they were to take a QB, I wouldn't be surprised if they did it early round 2, and they were like, all right, we don't know about Luck. We'll take Mason Rudolph or something, and we'll roll with that.
And I don't mind Brissett too. I mean, I know I'm a little bit biased because he was a Patriot, but
he's not that bad.
Yeah, no, I think he's okay. And if you go into the season saying Brissett's our starter, and you know he's going to be the starter, and he has that year to like in your system, he's in your building to grow, and he's a young guy too, that he could become a serviceable starter. So like, if they don't take quarterback at 3, in my opinion, I don't think they'll go quarterback, just because they kind of have. Like I would take Brissett over Mason Rudolph personally. So like I don't know, maybe I just think that they could surprise people on draft day and go quarterback at 3 and just like drop a bomb on the rest of the NFL because Luck's shoulder is blown out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can't blame you for taking the known against the unknown. I mean, because quarterback prospects are so unknown when they get to the next level. So we don't really know much about Mason Rudolph other than some college film. So I mean, I can't blame you for taking Brissett. I mean, personally, I probably would too because you don't know. And I love going with the known rather than the unknown. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. And I think personally the team that holds the key to this entire thing, I don't think it's the Cleveland Browns because I think they're going to do what's pretty much expected. And that's quarterback and then best player available, whoever that may be, Fitzpatrick or Chubb or Barkley. But the team I think holds the key is the Giants because there's so many options for them. They don't necessarily need to go QB, but they could go QB, and that shakes up things for the teams like the Broncos, the Jets, and even Arizona at 15. I mean, they don't have a quarterback on their roster, and unless they go out and get Nick Foles or sign Kirk Cousins somehow, they're going to have to make a move and get a quarterback unless they're settling for somebody at 15. But I think the team is the Giants. I think they hold the key to everything that we're going to see on draft night. And I'll probably be wrong. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a team that shakes the whole thing up and we see, something crazy happen. So I don't know. Do you got anything else for us?
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything I want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, Brad, where can we find you on Twitter, and where can we find your stuff as far as what you write and everything that you do?
Right. So the Twitter is at Brad Kelly 17, KELLY 17. My writing is for Breaking Football, which is breakingfootball.com, and at breaking_FB. And for you guys, Cover One, which is cover1.net, and the main Twitter page is at cover_1_. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct.
So that's basically where all my stuff can be found. I do have another Twitter account, which is at NFL Draft Videos, where I literally just post video clips in my spare time. But currently, I'm going through on the Brad Kelly page of posting moments of all the receivers that I've watched. I've been posting the last month or so. I've been posting a bunch of clips, and it's one single thread of the receivers. So I've covered maybe 4 or 5 of them already. So that would be a huge thread of just all the guys pretty much all the guys, or close to all the guys that I watch and grade.
Yeah. Well, dude, you do phenomenal work. Appreciate you following me. I follow you. You do, like I said, man, great stuff all the time. Be sure to follow them, guys. As for me, you know what to do. Russ NFL Draft. Be sure to subscribe to this on iTunes. Comment. Tell me you hate me. I hate you too. Other than that, this is Cover One, the podcast. We'll be back next week.